What's going on, nation? Welcome back to the channel. So I was scrolling through the tube the other day and a recent video from Simeon Panda popped up and it was titled How to Increase Your Bench Press Instant Improvement with Mike Rashid. And so I thought to myself, well, Simeon Panda is the most natural athlete on YouTube, so he's huge, so he must have amazing bench press tips. I gotta click this video and check it out because my bench could use some improvement. I mean, I'm barely able to get 315. I haven't hit it once yet with Ricky in the gym, even though Ricky hit 315.
Come on, push it. There you go.
So maybe these tips will help me finally be able to hit it again, and then I'll be able to, I don't know, win a prize, whatever the hell you get for doing that.
Pat on the back.
Pat on the back. All jokes aside though, before we really dive into this video and I dissect it a little bit and go over his 4 tips that he has, guys, I'm a fitness coach, all right? You don't have to bench 500 pounds to be able to teach somebody how to bench properly. That's why when you do a how-to search on YouTube for my videos, they have millions upon millions upon millions of views because I'm really good at teaching people proper form. In fact, it's one of the things that I pride myself on whenever I get new clients because everything I do is online. I have clients all over the world and I'm still able to teach them how to bench properly, how to squat properly, how to do bent over rows. Any compound movement, any exercise, I can teach them how to do it properly because I'm really good at giving form cues. It's something that I actually enjoy doing a lot. It's probably the thing that I enjoy most is correcting people's form. But just because I can't bench 405 doesn't mean that I can't show somebody how to bench correctly in order to get to that level. And the only reason why I'm saying that is because there's going to be trolls in the comment section that are like, you're just jealous because you can't bench that much weight. I can't bench that much weight. I'll probably never bench that much weight. Simeon and Mike Rashid are super friggin' strong, and it's very clear in the video. If anything, to me, the video is more of like a motivational video or something I would want to watch if I wanted to get pumped up to go to the gym. Because let's face it, when you watch big dudes bench a lot of weight, you get pumped up and you want to go bench. It's just the way it is, right? But talking about Simeon Panda for a second, like whether he's natural or not, I really don't care, right? It doesn't matter to me. But talking about that, I don't think he's natural. And if you go online and look at other people's videos talking about him being natty or not, most people, 99% of people, do not believe that he is natural. But let's say for a second that he is natural. If he actually was natural at that size and having that much muscle mass and keeping as much mass as that he does all year round, the dude is a genetic freak. Which to me at least kind of tells me like maybe the way he trains and his mentality on training, maybe it's not going to apply to the average person. Maybe it does. I'm not him. I don't know his programs or what he sells, but him looking the way he does naturally is because he is a genetic freak. So what works for him, I guarantee, is not going to work for the majority of you for that very reason. So it's kind of like a double-edged sword. He can claim he's natty, which kind of puts him in the freak level, which makes him not relatable to you, or he can cash in that natty card and say that he's on the sauce. Then he's going to be labeled a liar for lying about it as hardcore as he's been. At least I think so, because I don't believe him for the last, I don't know, 8, 9, 10 years. But anyways, moving on into the video. So the video is him and his buddy Mike Rashid, obviously benching in the gym, showing how they bench. And it kind of came across, and me and Ricky were watching it, like it's just 2 dudes showing how strong they are and how much weight they can bench. And the 4 tips that they give them sprinkled throughout the video. But number 1 was warm up. Number 2 was don't ego lift. Number 3 was use a belt. And number 4 was conserve energy, which I really understand how I'm going to instantly increase my bench press if I'm not using my ego and I'm conserving energy. That's not what they meant, okay? I was making a joke. So, but like the number 1 tip that they could have given to make this video was then, here's how you do proper form on a bench. Done. Video's over, right? That 1 tip alone would have helped 99% of you bench more because I guarantee a lot of you are not using 100% proper form. And as I went through the list and watched the video, that's the one thing I didn't see. And the number 1 thing that I have to fix on every single person who I see benching incorrectly, whether it's in the gym or with my online clients, is they do not understand how to properly pack their shoulders. If you want to increase your bench, you need to learn how to properly pack your shoulders. And that's just step one when it comes to proper form. Step two is learning where to place your feet so that you can create enough pressure from your shoulders to your heels in order to be able to have a solid stance while laying down on the bench press. And then step three from there is knowing how to place your butt on the bench with a slight arch. And number four, which does relate to using a belt, you need to know how to create the right amount of internal pressure to keep your core as strong as possible so that when you're benching, your body is solid. The only thing that's moving is your arms, up and down. That's it. So the tip that I would think would have been most effective to help you guys would have been just a simple, going over proper form tip, which they didn't do, they missed the mark on. But it doesn't mean that the other tips weren't helpful. Tip number one, warm up. This is an extremely helpful tip. A lot of people don't do enough warming up when they go to train. Simeon gives an example of like when he goes in the gym and he sees a guy who squats 225 for reps, that all the time he goes in the gym and he sees them immediately put 225 on the bar and then start squatting before warming up. I've been going to a gym for a long time. I think it's kind of a poor analogy. Like I barely see people just throw 225 on and start squatting. Like people usually warm up pretty well. I think in this day and age, people are smart enough to know that they probably can't do that if they haven't been doing anything with their legs all day. But I mean, it's his gym. Maybe he does see that everywhere he goes. I personally don't see that. People are smarter than that. The second tip is the ego lifting. And obviously, when you're ego lifting, that's a recipe for disaster when it comes to obviously getting an injury, especially if you don't have the best form. And one thing I didn't like about when he was talking about ego lifting is if he understood, proper form when it comes to a bench press, that he would know that as soon as your butt starts to leave that bench, it's too heavy for you. Your butt should not leave the bench. Not that these guys are powerlifting, but if you are in a powerlifting competition, which is where you are supposed to lift as heavy as you absolutely can, right? That's the entire point of that. And this is a video on how to increase your bench instantly, add more weight to your bench. One would assume you would apply tips that you would want to take into consideration if you were going to enter a powerlifting meet, so you can lift as heavy as possible safely. But as soon as your butt leaves that bench, that puts downward pressure on your spine and it starts to affect your lower back. So, and the only time their butts were leaving the bench were when they were benching heavier and heavier and heavier, which obviously is when it's probably the most dangerous for your butt to leave the bench. Again, I might not be able to bench 405 for 8 reps or 10 reps or however many times they did it, but it doesn't mean that I can't point out some flaws that could lead to a possible injury, and that's the last thing any of us want to have. Like, whether Simeon's natty or not, I don't want the guy to get injured. I have no ill will towards him. I just don't like that he claims natural when I believe that he's not. And then from there, he moves into use a belt, which I think is a great tip. A lot of guys don't like to use a belt because they feel like it holds them back or it'll make their core weak. But a lot of research, especially recently, has basically disproven that in fact, you will not get a weaker core from using a belt as long as you use it properly. And if anything, it'll actually help your core continue to get stronger as you lift heavier and heavier loads. But when he was explaining how to use the belt, he used some terminology that made it seem like he didn't really understand what the belt did. He said that you want to create a stomach vacuum that you can breathe into. And a vacuum is the opposite of what you do with a belt. A vacuum is when you suck your gut in. When you use a belt, you want to create inward pressure in your core that presses against the belt. It makes it like one solid piece. That's the proper way to use one. And so Mike didn't correct him, but then later on he talked about, having proper pressure in your core. So I kind of chalked that up to maybe he just misspoke and said it wrong. We all do it. It's not a big deal. But then as I was watching him bench and put his belt on, he was putting it on almost like an accessory to his tank top, right? Like, he put his weight belt on the way that I would put my belt on my pants to make sure they stay where they need to be when I'm moving around and walking. When you put on a weightlifting belt, okay, and this is also made apparent from, the interactions between Simeon and Mike in between their sets, like they're talking and they're joking with each other and having a good time, which, don't get me wrong, you should have a good time when you're training, But then when you're about to do your lift, you need to crank that thing to the proper notch so that you can get the right amount of pressure in your core to make the belt effective.
There you go. I told you would get it.
Fuck, man. Like, the way he had that belt on, it was barely doing anything to help you. And I feel like that's very misleading to a lot of the younger guys that have never used a belt before to see that. Like, that's why I like to use a lever belt. When you use a lever belt, you basically have it set to exactly where it needs to be when you close the lever. It's super tight, it's not hard to breathe, but it's not the most comfortable thing to have on you. And then as soon as you finish your set, you pop the lever, and then it's almost like a breath of fresh air, right? Because that pressure is gone. And that's what makes the belt effective, is having that pressure and then getting rid of it. So if you're using a belt like him, you have to crank it when you bench and then undo it when you're done, or you're gonna have a hard time breathing. And the last tip that Simeon gave was conserve energy, because obviously in the video they were going higher and higher and higher with their weights. And in order to do that, obviously you can't be doing 10 repetitions per set to work your way up there. You have to start off, obviously do your warm-up, and then usually you're sticking with like maybe 8 reps, then you go down to 6 or 7, then you go down to 4, and by the time you're getting towards your 1 rep max, obviously you're doing less repetitions, maybe a set of 3, maybe a set of 2, and then obviously 1 rep max is 1 rep. Oh, and speaking of that, back to the ego lifting, like there's a difference between ego lifting and there's a difference between getting your central nervous system used to moving more weight. Mike Rashid talks about how he doesn't like to spot people.
I'm not spotting nobody, so y'all be cautious with the weight that you choose.
But at the end of the day, if you're trying to get used to doing heavier weights, you're gonna have to do some heavy negatives, right? There's techniques that you have to utilize to get your muscles ready and trained to be handling more weight. And I actually want to mention my friend Nick right here, because he has a whole series on the key to benching 405 pounds. And if you watch Nick do his benching, and Nick is powerlifting, okay? He's a power lifter, he competes, he's super strong. Shit, man, I remember when I first met Nick 10 years ago, he wasn't even nearly as strong as he is now. I'm very proud of you, Nick, by the way. Looking ripped lately, too, in that Instagram. I gotta give my boy some love, guys. Me and Nick Wright, it goes back like 10 years. It's crazy. The OGs of YouTube fitness. Anyways, if you watch his series and you see his lifts, his arms aren't shaking when he unracks the bar. It's very smooth all the way down, all the way up. He has a high arch in his back. That's part of powerlifting, but his butt never leaves the bench. So if you want to learn how to bench safely that heavy of weight, I'd recommend watching his videos. I'll link to the channel series right here. So getting back to the original point, with Simeon Panda kind of saying like, oh, I don't focus on what I can bench, I focus on what I can bench now, you should be able to tell people, yeah, my 1 rep max is this, okay? This is what I was able to bench, this is my best lift I've ever done, and be proud of that number, but then also know that if you were truly competing and trying to enter a powerlifting meet, there's like preparation that goes into in order to have your best lift on your heaviest day. And I talked about this on my video about RPE, discussing the differences between my thoughts on training versus Athlete X and Jeff Nippert. I'll post that video right here if you guys didn't see it. But if you guys are trying to work on increasing your bench press, obviously you don't want to be burning yourself out with your sets of high repetitions in the beginning. You want to work your way up, and as you work your way up, you're going to decrease the amount of reps you're doing per set, but don't think that once you hit that 1 rep max, you're going to be able to hit that every single time you go to the gym and you do that same scheme of sets and reps in order that, and you do that same, but don't think every time you go to the gym, you'll be able to hit that same, set and rep scheme and then get that 1 rep max again. It doesn't work like that. So that wraps up this video, and I just want to be really clear. My goal or intention with this video was not to talk negatively about Simeon and Mike and their bench press technique. I mean, obviously these guys, they look phenomenal. They're incredibly strong, but the problem is that when you're gonna give tips to your audience, which has a lot of young guys, a lot of guys just starting out, a lot of intermediate lifters, and guys who probably never have lifted that heavy weight before, if you're gonna give tips on how to increase your bench press, I feel like the fundamentals still need to be mentioned and at least followed, especially when it comes to using a belt properly, keeping your butt on the bench, stuff like that. It's very important because those are the foundations to having a strong bench press. And if these guys are going to be benching super heavy weight and they start to forget about those foundations to having a strong bench, I mean, it could even lead to an injury for them. Maybe they watch this video and they see their form on the bench press and they go, yeah, man, I guess my butt was leaving the bench. I got to work on that. Who cares, right? We all have to work on things. I mean, I'm still to this day working on my squat, bench, and deadlift, trying to make it better, trying to make my form tighter. Who cares? Nobody's perfect, except maybe Ricky. Ricky can deadlift pretty heavy. He has pretty good form.
You're goddamn right.
Well, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you see anything on YouTube you want me to check out, take a look at, give my opinion on, just post a link down in the comment section below. And for those of you who are looking for a new workout program, you can try any of my programs on my site for 7 days free by clicking this link right here. I highly recommend that you try Cheat and Recover. Get a lot of aggression that you've been holding in from being stuck at home due to this whole pandemic. This is the program you're going to want to take it out on. See you guys.